Hello, and welcome to Intelligent Founder AI. This is episode 19th. In the last episode, we finished our 9-part Build, Buy, Rent AI infrastructure series. And before we start another, today I want to take a break and talk about a moment that many founders, product teams, and AI builders will recognize. You give a great demo. The people in the room are interested. Someone says, "This is exactly what we need." They ask smart questions. They imagine where it could help. You leave the meeting thinking this might become a real customer. Then the follow-up goes quiet. A week passes. Then 2. You hear that the team needs to discuss it internally. Security may need to look at it. Procurement may need to be involved. There may not be a budget this quarter. The person who was excited is no longer replying as quickly. And slowly, a deal that felt close turns into a long list of maybes. The problem is not always the product. The problem is often that the person who loved the demo was not the person, or the group of people who could actually buy it. For the last few episodes, I have been looking at the technology underneath AI. Compute, models, costs, edge deployment, sovereignty, and the choices founders make when they build their AI infrastructure. But technology is only part of the story. There is another layer that matters just as much. The commercial operating layer. How does an AI or deep tech product get selected, bought, deployed, renewed, and expanded inside a real enterprise? That is where many good products get stuck. So today the question is simple. Who really buys AI? And the short answer is almost never just one person. A lot of founders think of a sale as a conversation between their company and one customer. In a small business, that can sometimes be true. You meet the owner, they have a problem. They like your product, they decide. You start work. But in a larger organization, especially when you are selling AI, data products, software that touches operations, or anything connected to critical systems, buying is rarely that simple. There may be one person who feels the pain, another who owns the budget, another who has to use the product every day, another who needs to connect it to existing systems, and other people who care about security, data privacy, legal terms, procurement, risk, and compliance. They are all part of the decision, even if they never attend the same meeting. That is why a great demo can be necessary, but still not enough. Let's make this practical. Imagine you have built an AI tool that helps a maintenance team spot issues earlier. Maybe it analyzes inspection images. Maybe it looks at sensor data. Maybe it helps an engineer decide what needs attention first. You show it to a head of maintenance. They love it. They immediately understand the value. They can see fewer missed faults, less downtime, and faster decisions. This person may become your champion. A champion is someone inside the organization who believes in your product and wants it to succeed. That is valuable. You need champions. But a champion is not automatically the buyer. The head of maintenance may not control the budget. They may not be allowed to introduce a new tool without the IT team. They may need the security team to approve how data is handled. They may need operations to change a process. They may need procurement to create a supplier contract. They may need a senior executive to decide that this is important enough to fund. If you only sell to the champion, you can end up with a strong supporter and no deal. So I find it helpful to stop asking, who is my customer, and start asking, who are the people involved in this decision? You do not need a complicated spreadsheet with 50 stakeholders, but you do need a simple map. Here are the people to look for. First, there is the person with the problem. This is the person who lives with the pain every day. They may be a manager, engineer, operations lead, customer service leader, planner, analyst, or team leader. They know what is slow, expensive, risky, repetitive, or frustrating. They can tell you whether the problem is real, but they may not have money to solve it. Second, there is the person with the budget. This is the economic buyer. They do not always use the product, but they care about the business result. They want to know whether this saves money, creates revenue, reduces risk, improves quality, or helps the company hit an important goal. This person usually wants a clear answer to a plain question. Why should we spend money on this now? If you cannot answer that in simple language, you are making their job harder. Third, there is the person who will own the day-to-day workflow. This is often overlooked. Your product may be excellent, but it has to fit into someone's working day. Someone has to use it, manage it, respond to its output, deal with mistakes, and explain it to their team. If your AI produces an alert, who sees it? What do they do next? If it gives a recommendation, who approves it? If it is wrong, who is responsible? If it saves time, what does the team do with that time? These are not small details. They are often the difference between a tool that is admired and a tool that is adopted. Fourth, there is the technical team. They may work in IT, engineering, data, architecture, cybersecurity, or platform teams. They want to understand how your product fits into the systems already in place. They may ask, where does the data come from? Where does it go? Can this work with our identity system? Does it need an API? Can it run in our cloud environment? Can it run on our site? What happens when the network is unavailable? What does support look like? How do we monitor it? Some founders hear these questions and think, the technical team is blocking the deal. Usually that is the wrong way to see it. Their job is to prevent the company from buying something that creates a security problem, a data problem, an integration problem, or a support problem later. If you sell into enterprises, you need to help them do that job. Fifth, there are the people who manage risk. This could include security, privacy, legal, compliance, risk, safety, and data governance teams. In an AI sale, these people often become involved earlier than founders expect. They may want to know what data the system uses, whether customer or employee information is involved, whether data leaves the organization, how access is controlled, what the system can and cannot do, and what happens if something goes wrong. If your product is used in a sensitive workflow, they may also want to know whether a human remains in control of important decisions. Again, this is not a distraction from the sale. This is the sale. Trust is part of the product. Finally, there is procurement. Procurement is often blamed for slowing things down, but procurement is the process through which the organization checks suppliers, negotiates terms, manages contracts, and makes sure the company can buy responsibly. The key mistake is bringing procurement in only at the very end. If you have spent 3 months on a pilot and then discover that the company cannot easily buy from a new supplier, does not have the right budget category, or requires a long onboarding process, you have lost time that could have been planned for. The simple lesson is this: do not treat the buying process as something that begins after the customer says yes. It begins when the customer first becomes serious. Now, none of this means you should try to contact everyone in the company on day one. That would be overwhelming and probably counterproductive. It means you should become curious early. When someone says, "We love this," your next question should be practical. Who else needs to be comfortable with this? Who owns the budget for this problem? Who would use it day to day? What systems would it need to connect to? Who normally reviews new AI or data tools? If the pilot works, who decides what happens next? These questions are not aggressive. They show that you understand enterprise reality. They also save you from building the wrong pilot. Let's talk about a common pattern. A founder meets an innovation team. The innovation team is excited. They want to test the product. They have a small budget for experiments. The founder is delighted because this feels like progress. It can be progress, but it can also be a trap. Innovation teams are often great at finding new ideas, but they may not own the operational budget, the long-term workflow, or the systems that need to change for the product to scale. So, before you begin, ask, if this test goes well, which business team will own it? Which budget will pay for it? Who has the operational problem that this product solves every week, not just during an innovation program? You do not need every answer before you start, but you need a credible path. This matters even more in deep tech. When you are selling sensing, industrial AI, edge systems, infrastructure technology, or anything that affects physical operations, the buying group can be larger and the trust requirement can be higher. Your customer is not only buying software, they may be buying a change to how people work, how assets are inspected, how risks are managed, how decisions are made, or how data moves across their operation. That takes time. The answer is not to give up or to complain about long sales cycles. The answer is to design your sales process around reality. You can do this with a simple four-part approach. First, find the pain. Make sure there is a real problem owned by a real team that costs something today. It could cost money, time, safety, quality, customer satisfaction, lost opportunity, or management attention. Do not begin with, "We have an amazing AI model." Begin with, "What important problem is this team trying to solve?" Second, find the owner. Who owns that problem? Who will look better if it gets solved? Who will have to live with the consequences if it is not solved? That is usually where your strongest champion will be. Third, find the path to a decision. Ask who needs to approve a move from interest to pilot and from pilot to deployment. Find the budget owner, the operational owner, and the people responsible for technology and risk. Fourth, create evidence. Enterprise buyers do not only want promises, they want evidence that your product can work in their environment, with their data, their processes, their people, and their constraints. A demo shows possibility. A well-designed pilot shows evidence. A paid deployment shows commitment. Those are different things. There is another point worth making. Many technical founders assume that if the product is good enough, the organization will find a way to buy it. Sometimes that happens. Most of the time, it does not. A buyer may agree that your product is useful and still decide not to move forward. Maybe the problem is not urgent enough. Maybe there is no clear owner. Maybe the savings are not large enough to justify the effort. Maybe the team cannot take on a new implementation this quarter. Maybe security concerns are unresolved. Maybe your product has to compete with another internal project. That is not always a rejection of your technology. It is information about the commercial reality around your technology. The best founders learn to hear that information early. They do not just ask, "Do you like it?" They ask, "What would have to be true for you to buy it?" That is a much better question, and it invites a serious conversation. It tells you whether the deal is real. It can reveal the real barriers before you spend months trying to solve the wrong problem. For example, the answer might be, "We would need to see that it reduces inspection time by 30%. Or, "We would need the security team to approve the data flow." Or, "We would need a business unit leader to sponsor it." Or, "We would need it to work with our existing reporting system." Now you have something concrete to work with. You can decide whether that is a sensible requirement, whether you can meet it, and whether this customer is worth the effort. That brings us to an important founder discipline: qualifying the customer. Founders often think customers are evaluating them. Of course they are. But you are also evaluating the customer. Do they have a meaningful problem? Is there a real budget? Is there a person who owns the outcome? Can they provide the data, access, time, and internal support needed for a pilot? Is there a plausible route to deployment? A customer who says yes to a small experiment but cannot answer those questions may not be your best early customer. Your best early customer is usually not the biggest brand name. It is the organization where the problem is urgent, the owner is engaged, the decision path is clear enough, and the team can actually move. That customer gives you more than revenue. They help you learn how your product fits a real workflow. They help you build evidence. They give you the language, case study, and credibility to sell to the next customer. So, if you are building or selling AI into an enterprise, here's a simple exercise for this week. Take your most promising prospect pilot or existing customer conversation. Write down 6 names or roles. Who has the problem? Who has the budget? Who will use the product? Who owns the technical integration? Who reviews security, data, legal, or compliance risk? Who manages the purchasing process? Then ask yourself 2 questions. Which of these people have I spoken to? And which of these people do I only know about through someone else? That gap is your work. You do not have to sell to everyone in the same way. The operations lead needs to hear how the product improves the daily workflow. The budget owner needs to understand the business case. The technical team needs clarity about integration. The risk team needs evidence and controls. Procurement needs a straightforward route to buy. The product is the same. The conversation is different. That is not manipulation, that is communication. And it is one of the biggest differences between selling a clever technology and building a real enterprise business. Let me leave you with one final thought. When a deal slows down after a great demo, do not immediately assume the customer has lost interest. Ask whether you have found the full buying group. Ask whether you know the problem, the owner, the budget, the workflow, the risks, and the route to a decision. A fan of your product is helpful, but a buying group is what gets the contract signed. Thanks for listening to Intelligent Founder AI. And in the next episode, I will look at what happens after the customer agrees to try your product. Until then, do not just ask who likes your product. Ask who needs to trust it, use it, pay for it, and say yes. If this episode was useful, subscribe to Intelligent Founder AI and support the publication. I share practical deep dives for people building, buying, and selling AI into enterprises, from infrastructure, models, agents, security, and edge AI, to product strategy and the commercial reality of winning customers. The podcast episodes are free, and I take one important AI or technology question at a time and explain what it means in practice. You can also follow our companion blogs, AI Unfiltered for the stories behind the AI headlines, and Quantopinion, which is focused on analyzing of quantum technology, sensing and computing, and covering everything that's happening in the industry right now. That's it for today. See you in the next episode.